Hey guys, welcome to our shop. I am Jimmy from Systemic Sounds out of Trinidad and Tobago, and doing a segment here for the guys at Harmonics International, specifically the founder Kenrick of Guyana. But I reached out to me some time back and asked that I do something to contribute to his page because he's doing a lot of fun things with this page in terms of creating awareness for car audio. We are all advocates for car audio and sound in general. So Kenrick and they have a lot of videos on their profile on their platform with creating awareness and doing up tutorials for the general public that wouldn't have the knowledge or understanding, or some of us just doesn't have the time to go and read through stuff and would like to get information. So I told Kenrick that I would go through the teal parameters for a speaker, right? So what is a speaker, right? So this is a speaker. Traditionally, all speakers have the same characteristics, whether it's a small magnet, a big magnet, one that doesn't even look like a magnet. It basically consists of more or less the same parts. A motor, which is a magnet, right? A basket that holds the magnet in place so that you can center and balance the cone. Suspension, this is the cone, this is the suspension. In this case, this is a coaxial, so this carries a tweeter. All right, and in there there's a voice coil, a spider, pigtail wires that brings the connection from the voice coil that's on the cone onto the terminals to allow for smooth connection while the speaker is moving. Now, what causes the speaker to move? The speaker is an electromagnet that basically responds to AC sine wave, AC voltage, right? That comes from an amplifier or any device. It could be the deck, it could be an amplifier. And that voltage that is present at the output of these devices is measured in AC voltage, right? AC voltage, I don't have a pen here, but AC voltage is a sine wave. Straight line across, and then there's a sign. Plus, minus, and the straight line represents 0. Right? So, when you send an AC signal into the speaker via the terminals, the speaker will now behave based on that. Alright? So, it would move forward, which is called positive cycle, and then backward, which is called negative cycle. So, now that we understand how the speaker behaves and what is a speaker, we will get into the stuff that's on this list here. Alright guys, so I will be reading, so I will not probably have eye contact at all times. Alright, but I'll try my best to maintain the discussion at bay. Alright, so on your spec sheet you'd have information there that may not make sense to you. So you might just say, I don't need this. Throw it away and cut up some board, make an enclosure, put the speaker in there, and it would not perform the way you want. So you ask yourself, was this product bad in terms of the recommendation, or did the manufacturer give untruth information about the speaker? But without getting into the full details of the speaker, you would not be able to determine whether it was a bad choice or you didn't apply the speaker in the right way. So you see something like FS. What is the FS? The FS is the resonant frequency that the speaker would play naturally. So if I were to run a sine wave into this speaker in free air, it would peak at a specific frequency. Let's just say 50 Hertz. 50 Hertz would be the FS of the speaker. Right? So you know that that speaker can naturally play the FS is naturally at 50 Hertz. So if you would use that alone, you could now figure out that you need an enclosure that is within that frequency range for the speaker to behave optimally, right? Because it would be able to produce that frequency naturally. So it means that it wouldn't have to force to do anything, right? Then you would see QTS, the total Q factor, right? So it's basically a measure of the speaker's damping and whether it would be better suited for a ported enclosure or a sealed enclosure, right? So if it's a a high QTS, you go with a sealed enclosure. And if it's a low QTS, you go with a ported enclosure. It means that the speaker would behave better in either or. So you would need that as a valuable piece of information. So you would now know, listen, I bought this speaker. I want to play low bass. And now I want to do a ported enclosure. Now we know that a ported enclosure will give you about 3 decibels more and the ability to go a bit lower on the frequency bandwidth. Alright, so you know that you need to look, based on what we just discussed, you know that you need to look for a speaker that has a lower QTS, so you can put it in a ported box and it would work better. Right? So that's also something that you need to consider. And then you would see the VAS. The VAS is basically the volume of air that has the same stiffness of the speaker's suspension. Now the suspension is a 2-part thing for a speaker, okay? So this here is what we call a suspension. However, there's a balance between the suspension and the spider, which would mean that there's something between both. There's a marriage between both that would combine and give you the speaker's ability to resist whatever power you're going to put on it, and then into the enclosure. When you load the cone into the enclosure, you would know how stiff the speaker is and how it would react, right? So you need that information. So that is what the VAS is. It would tell you, you know, how stiff the speaker is and what volume it can handle, right? So that would be information you would need to know what cubic the enclosure should be. Okay, now you move on, you would see SD, which is the effective cone area of the speaker. Right, means that what is the, out of this entire 6.5 inch, how much of it is actually going to be effective. Now when you're measuring a speaker, you measure for cone, effective cone area, you measure from the outside of the suspension to the opposite end inside of the suspension. So that's from this inside of the suspension to the opposite side outside of the suspension, or dead center of the suspension to the opposite dead center of the suspension. And that's how you get the effective cone area. Okay, so effective cone area, or SD, is what that is. All right.